Splinter and Tang Shen, Mirage 2012 continuity. A love story ends with a murder, and the fallout isn't just grief, it's the engine for everything that follows. In Mirage Studios continuity, Tang Shen is Hamato Yoshi's partner, and their bond isn't just memorable, it becomes the axis around which all early TMNT tragedy spins. The original comics anchor Tang Shen as the motivation for Yoshi, and she is struck down not by accident, but as calculated revenge. Tang Shen is Hamato Yoshi's wife, and their romance draws the jealousy of Foot Clan member Oroku Nagi. What follows is a domino effect of violence, loss, and transformation. Tang Shen's death leads directly to Hamato Yoshi's killing by Oroku Saki, orphaning Splinter in the process. Splinter is left without a master and forced to survive in the aftermath of the blood feud. It's this void, the absence of Yoshi and Shen, that sets up Splinter as the sole survivor and eventually as the caretaker of the 4 mutated turtles. And yes, that accidental mutation is anything but random. The Mirage origin doesn't just gleefully toss around radioactivity. Instead, it draws a line straight from the same isotope accident that blinded Matt Murdock to the one that changed Splinter's world forever. The mutation and the tragedy are deeply intertwined, and the connective tissue isn't just science fiction, it's a nod to comic lore that ties 2 universes together in a single event. This isn't just narrative, it's a chain reaction that fundamentally reconfigures Splinter as a character. A specialist would point out that the loss of Tang Shen isn't merely storytelling convenience, it's a deliberate move to untether Splinter from his old life, forcing him into his own chapter. The aftermath isn't a footnote, it's the entire justification for how a bereaved rat becomes the unlikely guardian and mentor of the mutated brothers. For anyone caught in the aftermath of real loss, what this yields is painfully recognizable. One single act of violence reshapes destinies, leaves survivors alone in a new world, and triggers changes nobody could have expected. Subscribe and tell us in the comments which romantic couple you think was the most tragic or the most unexpected. Let's get back into it. Michelangelo and Princess Sari, Mirage Comics. You've seen tragic human love, now try alien romance with a shell. The second pairing isn't a repeat of Splinter and Tang Shen's story, it's a shift in category, with Michelangelo's arc introducing a completely different version of significant other. In Mirage Studios comics, Michelangelo meets Princess Sari, and their relationship is an explicit part of his story in that continuity. Rather than a love forged in conflict or loss, Michelangelo's bond with Sari develops through interplanetary diplomacy. The facts land hard. Princess Sari appears in Mirage Studios continuity with a connection to Michelangelo that the source describes as strongly suggesting paternity. There's no sidestepping the specifics. The romance plays out in the context of ambassador work, alien customs, and the everyday challenges involved in connecting 2 vastly different worlds. This isn't a story about vengeance or revenge, it's about what happens when familiarity is pushed aside in favor of the strange. An alien princess, court intrigue, and a turtle ambassador learning how to navigate feelings across dimensions. The relationship is official, published in the comics, and doesn't rely on vague hints or subtext. It's direct, documented, and stands out precisely because it refuses to follow the formula set by earthbound couples. All of this wasn't built for traditional romance fans. It's designed for readers who want to see what happens when boundaries, literal and figurative, are tested, when the romantic interest is more than human, and when the story dares to ask what counts as connection in a universe brimming with possibility. The Mirage Studios pairing of Michelangelo and Princess Sari is a deliberate move for an audience willing to embrace the unexpected, to see their favorite character grow beyond the familiar, and to ask what love looks like when the rulebook is rewritten. Donatello and Lotus Blossom, 1987 animated series. The 1987 animated series held Donatello's romantic ineligibility as a structural constant across multiple seasons. Donatello had brief romantic interests in the 1987 series, including Lotus Blossom herself, though none received the narrative weight of a full commitment arc. But that rule had a footnote the series never made official. Lotus Blossom appeared in Season 4, Episode 24, titled Farewell, Lotus Blossom. She was a fellow ninja in training, a kunoichi, positioned narratively as exactly the kind of character capable of breaking the pattern. She had the background, the shared discipline, the dramatic name, every element the setup required. The episode's title does the work of a relationship story without the show ever having to commit to one. Farewell implies a bond. A bond implies investment. Investment implies the kind of goodbye that carries weight. The writers acknowledged the romantic possibility structurally, giving Donatello a farewell episode named after a woman who shares his martial discipline, then resolved it through absence rather than confrontation. Lotus Blossom's arc concluded as an exit. She left. The episode ended, and Donatello's 1987 series love interests, Irma and Lotus Blossom, both remained single-episode connections that the show never fully developed. The show moved past her without ever altering the rule her introduction had quietly threatened. Lotus Blossom appeared in a single 1987 episode, and Donatello's other romantic connection to Irma likewise remained underdeveloped throughout the series. This is what the category actually tests: whether a writer decides to commit to a pairing, not whether a pairing is narratively possible. Lotus Blossom had every element a love interest required: shared discipline, dramatic timing, a farewell episode named specifically after her. And the category still did not claim her. The continuity rules aren't walls, they're decisions no one chose to push against hard enough to matter. Donatello's romantic status held not because the narrative forbade an exception, but because the exception appeared once and then was allowed to leave without consequence. Raphael and Mona Lisa, IDW Comics. Where Donatello's near miss stayed contained to a single season 4 episode, Mona Lisa's arrival in IDW TMNT number 101 introduced a character whose relationship history was deliberately rewritten for a new creative era. This isn't a footnote to an existing rule, it's a relationship substantial enough to mark the exact point where an entire creative era ended. Mona Lisa was brought into IDW's TMNT series beginning with issue number 101 by writer and artist Sophie Campbell. TMNT IDW number 101 marked Mona Lisa's debut, though the extent of a creative team transition at that issue is unverified, rather than a continuation of the previous one. Sophie Campbell redesigned Mona Lisa for IDW, drawing from elements of both her previous designs. She posted that redesigned version on Twitter ahead of the character's official debut, not as a leak from official channels, not as a marketing tease, but as a direct public statement from the incoming creative lead about what this character would mean under her stewardship. The platform was deliberate, the timing was deliberate, fans responded immediately and with specific knowledge, and their excitement came from a precise recognition. Mona Lisa's prior history as Raphael's love interest from the 1987 series was set aside in IDW, making her debut a deliberate break from that pattern. They understood that bringing her into IDW wasn't a random casting choice. It was the deliberate reassertion of a relationship that had carried weight in other continuities, now being inserted at the exact moment the series' creative leadership changed hands. Issue number 101 did two things at once. It ended one team's version of Raphael's romantic history and began another's. That the fans' reaction was so immediate and so precise, excitement rooted in recognition rather than surprise, tells you that Raphael's love interests aren't treated as disposable within this category. They're treated as defining features of his character across continuities, significant enough to carry forward even when the hands writing him change entirely. But the fact that it required a complete creative transition to bring her in officially, that she couldn't enter the narrative while the previous run was still active, that the door had to clear before she could walk through, tells you something about how institutional continuity shapes these pairings. Raphael's romantic connections carry enough weight to be worth preserving across creative eras, but not enough to enter a story without the runway being cleared first. The facts force a plain conclusion. The category treats Raphael's love life as character canon, not just plot, and institutional inertia matters more than narrative timing when deciding which relationships get to exist. April O'Neil and Casey Jones, Cross Continuity, 1987 series, 2003 series, Mirage Comics, IDW Comics, 2014 film. It's one thing to bring a renegade scientist or mutated vigilante into the mix, but this couple appears as a romantic pairing in several major TMNT continuities. April O'Neil first appeared in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #2 Mirage Studios, October 1984. And in Mirage Comics' select animated series, in the 2014 film, the pairing becomes a recurring romantic arc. In key continuities, the relationship is a major subplot shaping the human cast dynamic. The evidence isn't shy. The 2003 animated series develops their romance mirroring the Mirage comic dynamic. In the IDW comics, April O'Neil and Casey Jones frequently team up, with April active in the fight against their enemies. Can you name another romantic pairing where one partner outright inherits the other's vigilante persona on the streets? In the Last Ronin continuity, Casey Marie Jones follows as the next generation, drawing on the legacy of April O'Neil and Casey Jones. The numbers don't lie. Across the Mirage comics, select animated series, and films, April O'Neil is often central, with her bond to Casey Jones a recurring arc. So, what would it take for this ordinary explanation to fly? For the viewer to claim it's just another will they won't they side plot, it would have to be background noise. The relationship is sustained and developed across multiple decades and continuities, remaining a memorable element. Especially in IDW, the legacy of April and Casey's partnership is continued through teamwork and storylines that echo their dynamic. Resolve the contradiction. April O'Neil and Casey Jones are not a subplot, not a possible pairing, not a footnote. They are a memorable romantic pairing, canon in multiple major continuities. Shadow Jones. Suddenly things get intimate. Close-range, everyday human stakes instead of mutant battles and vigilante drama. Shadow Jones, in the Mirage Comics continuity, is the biological daughter of Gabrielle and an unnamed father. After Gabrielle's death in childbirth, Casey Jones steps in as legal guardian. There's no superpower, no mutation, just grief, protection, and a legal transfer. Shadow Jones grows up surrounded by the Turtles, forming close connections with Michelangelo and Raphael. Shadow's experiences center on the unique dynamics of her family and those living nearby. April O'Neil becomes Shadow's stepmother after marrying Casey Jones, bringing the family together. It's domestic, familiar. Shadow anchors many emotional moments in the comics as she grows up amid the Ninja Turtles and her unusual family. Steelman, the counter-argument: if you claim the Jones arc is about superpowered destinies and epic battles, you could almost ignore Shadow. But you'd have to overlook the daily scenes, the games, the talk of family, her close relationship with the Turtles, and her personal growth over time. The harder truth is that every beat around Shadow is about ordinary life, not warriors and mutants. What was really happening? Her arc is about how a patchwork family forms and how childhood is shaped by extraordinary circumstances. It's not the legacy of war, it's the ordinary pain and hope that make the TMNT world feel human. Alapex. If there's one pairing whose stakes eclipse every human contradiction so far, it's Alapex and Raphael in the IDW Comics continuity. Here, emotional fallout isn't just collateral, it's the main event. In the IDW Comics, Alapex's romantic involvement with Raphael is consistently central. This isn't a simple transition from enemy to ally. Her arc begins in loyalty to Shredder and twists through psychological and emotional abuse. Most characters come home untarnished from villainy, but Alapex is built for scars. The specifics stack up fast. Alapex doesn't just switch sides, she claws her way through manipulations, betrayal, and the damage loaded onto her mind. Raphael's involvement isn't casual. He becomes her anchor, helping her find something to hold on to outside the war. There are no simple fixes. The IDW comics make clear that her relationship with Raphael is fraught, significant, and structurally essential. Romantic tension, yes, but also trauma, recovery, and a fight for trust. Every scene is built on uncertainty, not resolved feelings. So let's press the assumption. Suppose Alapex's recovery and partnership with Raphael were as clean as the usual redemption arc, loyalty swapped, trauma cured, romance resolved. But that's not what happens. Alapex is depicted as emotionally complex precisely because her scars are deep and lasting. The psychological wounds from Shredder don't vanish when she changes sides, they flare, undermine, and shape every moment with Raphael. The facts break the template. The romance is not a simple fix, it's an open wound, a constant negotiation. No summary, no neat resolution, Just Alapex caught in the midst of battle, Raphael holding ground beside her, both marked by what they have survived, neither entirely healed, but refusing to give up. The picture the story paints is not closure, but survival. Two warriors at the edge, carrying scars, making peace with the fight.